It was kind of like one of those dysfunctional family dinners. Underneath compressed smiles at the G20 summit in Argentina, Canada, the US, and Mexico finally signed the new NAFTA deal. Still has to be ratified in each country. And those steel and aluminum tariffs still remain. Nonetheless, it was a huge moment for a group of leaders who don't agree on much, including on how to deal with another member of the G20 family, Saudi Arabia. Canada slapped targeted sanctions on 17 Saudi individuals over the case of the murdered journalist Jamal Khashoggi. But was that far enough? Let's find out. Joining me now, the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh. Mr. Singh, great to have you back on the program. Let's start off with the so-called new NAFTA. Would you have signed this deal without getting rid of the steel and aluminum tariffs?
Absolutely not. I made it very clear that there's no way we should be signing a trade agreement with a country while we still have illegal aluminum and steel tariffs that threaten 35,000 jobs directly, up to 140,000 jobs indirectly. We know that the manufacturing sector is fragile, given what's happened with GM very recently. So these are jobs that are at risk, and there's no way we should be signing a deal without making sure that those tariffs are removed. This was our bargaining chip that the Prime Minister just threw away. The Trump administration, Trump himself wanted this photo op. They needed this photo op. This was our chance to say, we're not going to sign it until you remove these tariffs, these illegal tariffs. And that was a lost opportunity.
Okay, but
in addition to the impacts to farmers and the impacts to the rising cost of medication.
But I'm trying to understand the risk here. It's true, and Justin Trudeau has spoken strongly about these steel and aluminum tariffs, although there's been no action on them. We all agree that they're unnecessary and illegal. But are you saying the risk of not having a deal, the risk of what Donald Trump said, slapping tariffs on autos and not getting a deal to at least stabilize that relationship, is less than the risk of living with the steel and aluminum tariffs, even though we have counter tariffs against them?
This was the best opportunity to say, listen, we're signing this deal, just remove these tariffs. They don't make any sense. They're illegal anyways. The clause on which they're based has no basis, so remove them. And this was the opportunity to do it. I would have been forceful and make sure that we did not sign until this was removed.
Right.
There's a lot of jobs at stake. These are thousands of jobs at stake.
Well, if it was a bargaining chip, you'd think he might remove them now that they got the deal, but we'll see. Let me talk about General Motors. You mentioned that already. In Oshawa, obviously the plant will close. There are 2,800 jobs there that will be gone by 2019. What would you do to keep those jobs there? Is there anything you could do?
Well, we first have to accept that we should not be accepting defeat. Our approach should not be, okay, the deal is done and this is over. We need to be fighting for those jobs and figuring out a solution. Let's get creative. Let's find solutions to making sure people have a job there and have a robust sector. The other thing we've been asking is this is not the first. This is going to be maybe one of many other potential closings if we don't develop a national auto strategy, something we've been calling for a long time. And specifically, we said we need this government, we need the Prime Minister within 2 weeks to meet with the municipal, provincial leaders, sit down with industry and workers and figure out a way that we can save those jobs.
Okay, I appreciate that. By the same token, I'm just trying to get specific. What would you specifically do? For example, would you offer General Motors more subsidies after we had to already forgive them of loans almost for $1 billion after the bailout? Would you offer more subsidies to General Motors to stay?
We know one thing for certain, that blank check giveaways with no conditions attached, no enforcement attached, do not work. So we need to make sure that any approach has conditions clear. We already see that the government's going down the same path with a $14 billion economic statement, which does not have concrete conditions or strings attached to job retention or creation. That has got to be a criteria in any sort of support program that comes forward. There's got to be clear conditions that apply to jobs, retaining them, or creating them. That has got to be a condition.
Ms. Singh, you speak passionately about workers, but here's what I don't get about your position. You talk about the workers in Oshawa, the 2,800 workers there. Look what's happening in Alberta. Oil is at historic lows, $13 to $10. You've got an unemployment rate in Calgary of 8.2%, almost double the national average. They're losing $80 million a day. Rachel Notley says it's because we can't get a pipeline built. But you don't support the Trans Mountain Pipeline. She looks at people like you and said, how can you stand for working families when you're literally putting, it's like you don't care about the working families of Alberta when they're out of work, but you speak passionately about the working families in Oshawa. How do you square the circle?
Working people that work in the oil sands are not to blame when commodity prices fall through the bottom. When we got commodity prices for oil that are sub $20 sometimes, the volatility of those commodity numbers is not the fault of the hardworking people that are putting in time day in, day out in the oil sands or any other resource extraction. It's not their fault. But it would be our fault if we don't come up with a sustainable plan to ensure that they've got a job not just today, but for tomorrow. They've got to be sustainable, long-lasting, and not subject to these busts and booms and the volatility, the unpredictability. We would be doing a disservice to those folks.
But hold on. I understand that. But people got to make a mortgage payment today. People are losing their job today. The future, which you're talking about, that may be right, but you're looking at working families who are losing work today, billions of dollars lost today. You talk about sitting down and coming up with a creative solution for GM. Here's a solution for those workers, according to someone who shares your philosophic position for the working person, Rachel Notley. Build a pipeline. You refuse to do it. It's like you're looking at those families and saying, sorry, I can't help you now. I may help you in the future. How can you stand for the working person with that position? Do you have to rethink your position?
I would say let's take that $5 billion, instead of buying a pipeline, which we did, those $5 billion would be far better used and more effectively used to directly support workers with initiatives right now. Instead of buying something and then committing to building something, which is going to take years, that's not going to happen overnight. That's not going to happen tomorrow. That's not going to happen in a day. That's going to take a long time. And then to see the results of that, that's also not going to happen overnight. We're talking about long-term there as well. Right. I'm saying instead of investing in a long-term solution, which we don't know is actually going to create opportunities for jobs that are going to be long-lasting, investing in something that's not going to actually create jobs that we know are going to be stable or sustainable or predictable, because we can't control the commodity prices. And we know, given the world scale, that those commodity prices are not stable. Right. They're hovering all over the place. They're going extremely low, record lows.
Well, Canada's are low.
In those circumstances, it would be irresponsible for us to invest more money into unpredictability and instability instead of saving those workers today by ensuring that we've got a plan today to actually help those workers with sustainable jobs that are going to be long-lasting.
Right. Well, the Canadian price is 10 to 13 bucks. Outside in the U.S., they're selling it for 50 bucks. Let me move on to Saudi Arabia, though, because I think it's really key post G20. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, widely seen by many in the world to be the guy behind the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, also responsible for the war going on in Yemen. If you were the Prime Minister and you were at the G20 and there were these targeted sanctions that Canada's put on it, would you have shaken his hand, and would you have included him, the Crown Prince, on the list of targeted sanctions?
These gestures of shaking hands, not shaking hands, pale in comparison to the concrete step of ending the arms deal today. That is a concrete step that shows that we stand up for human rights, that we believe in the rights of people, and that we don't support a war that's resulting in massive starvation and famine and pain and suffering.
So do you
include him? Support a regime which has a horrible record, particularly given the circumstances around the death of a journalist who was openly critical of the government, who happened to be killed in a consulate. This is just outrageous that we're continuing to sell arms to a country like this. I can't fathom why our Prime Minister is not ending that agreement today.
Fair point. Would you have included the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia on the list of targeted individual sanctions? 17 others were on the list. Would you include him?
Again, if the Magnitsky, the act that we used, exactly, could be used in this circumstance, it should be used, and we support the fact that it's been used. Given the evidence we have, there is clear evidence, and there's clear pointing to the fact that the Crown Prince was involved or had some knowledge. That evidence is out there. I'm saying that's one step that's being considered.
But you would put him on. You would put him on.
Far more
but you would put them on
so I'm
that.
saying more powerful than that. That's absolutely, we should be applying that, and we should be applying to anyone that could be considered to be involved. And the fact that it's been used, I think, on 17 individuals, using it on everyone that's involved is appropriate.
Great to have you back on the program. I got to leave it there today, Mr. Singh. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Evan.